Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. On a pitch-black night in April 1656, a massive Dutch merchant ship slammed blindly into an uncharted coral reef. The hull splintered almost immediately. This was the Vergulde Draeck, and she was carrying a fortune. Bound for Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, her hold was packed with trade goods and 8 heavy chests holding 78,600 silver guilders. When the ship broke apart, the ocean claimed 118 lives in a matter of minutes. The remaining 75 passengers and crew managed to drag themselves through the surf, collapsing on a dark, desolate stretch of sand. But surviving the wreck was only the beginning. What happened next on that beach triggered a 360-year-old maritime mystery, the story of an entire survivor camp that seemingly vanished into the earth. To understand how they ended up on that reef, we have to look at how ships navigated in the 1600s. Sailors could calculate their horizontal position, their latitude, by measuring the sun and stars. But calculating their vertical position, longitude, was almost entirely guesswork. Dutch captains used a strategy called dead reckoning. They would sail east across the Indian Ocean, estimate how fast and how far they had traveled, and then simply guess when it was time to turn north toward Indonesia. The captain of the Vergulde Draeck misjudged his speed. He sailed too far east, running straight into a continent that barely existed on their maps. This early drawing of Nova Hollandia shows just how little Europeans understood about the Australian coast at the time. Because of a simple mathematical limitation, 75 people found themselves stranded on a hostile, unmapped edge of the world. With limited supplies pulled from the wreckage, Captain Peter Albertson made a desperate calculation. He ordered his second-in-command and 6 crew members into the only surviving small boat to go get help. Their objective was to cross 1,400 nautical miles of open ocean to reach Batavia, navigating purely by the stars in a tiny, open craft. Against all odds, they made it. After 41 agonizing days at sea, the 7 men arrived. The Dutch East India Company immediately mobilized search vessels to retrieve the captain, the remaining 68 castaways, and the sunken silver. But when the rescue ships finally dropped anchor at the exact coordinates provided by the survivors, they found nothing. The 68 people left waiting on the beach were gone. They left no bodies and no clear trail. An entire community, organized under a captain, had simply been swallowed by the landscape. The initial rescue missions quickly turned into their own disasters. When the ship Good Hope arrived, the treacherous surf and harsh terrain claimed the lives of 11 searchers. In 1658, a search party discovered a circle of 13 wooden ship planks driven deep into the sand, their jagged ends facing the sky. The beach around them was entirely empty, a silent, geometric arrangement left on a deserted coast. The coast was so dangerous that one of the rescuers, Abraham Lehman, was accidentally abandoned by his own ship during a sudden storm. He and a few men were forced to undertake their own brutal 9-month journey back to Java just to survive. After these lethal failures, the Dutch stopped looking. For the next 3 centuries, the fate of the castaways devolved into myth. Historians debated their final fate. Did they march north, die in the merciless desert, or join local Yuet Aboriginal tribes? The Western Australian coastline proved so hostile that the people sent to save the castaways ended up needing rescue themselves. The original survivors were lost to history. The silence broke in 1963. A group of 5 spear fishermen swimming about 3 kilometers offshore spotted something unnatural on the seafloor: the scattered, coral-encrusted remains of the Vergulde Draeck. Word of the discovery leaked, kicking off a chaotic scramble for the lost silver. Rogue treasure hunters like Alan Robinson took boats out to the reef, dropping heavy sticks of dynamite into the water to blast apart the fragile coral and free the coins. The looting was reckless. At one point, Robinson even piled up calcified chunks of the reef outside his house, supposedly using the silver-packed rocks as cheap road base for his driveway. The situation grew so destructive that the government had to step in, passing the world's first historic shipwreck legislation to stop the plunder. The ship's final resting place was now known and legally protected. but the actual people who made it to shore were still missing. That changed between 2022 and 2025. Investigators finally shifted their focus away from the ocean and started looking closely at the coastal dunes. Using metal detectors and careful excavation, prospectors and marine archaeologists began finding distinct 17th-century objects buried just under the sand. They uncovered delicate personal items that could only have belonged to the stranded crew. They found brass navigation dividers, a lead fishing weight, and perfectly intact white clay tobacco pipes. They also discovered heavy domestic items salvaged from the wreckage. These thick, salt-glazed Bartman jugs were used to store and transport liquids. This collection of objects suggests an organized effort to endure. Rather than scattering into the desert in a panic, the crew moved inland with their salvaged supplies to establish a structured camp. The artifacts were centered around a series of shallow limestone caves along the coast. The survivors used these rock overhangs for shelter, creating a makeshift settlement that has sat frozen in time. And recently, researchers uncovered a crucial detail about their surroundings. They found freshwater aquifers pouring directly out of the sand right where the waves break on the beach. This means the castaways had access to drinkable water. They weren't dying of thirst in the first few days. They built defensive stone walls across the cave entrances, rationed their liquids, and managed to survive for an extended period, waiting and watching the horizon. These scattered pipes and jugs make this site the oldest known European survivor camp on the Australian mainland, predating British colonization by more than 150 years. The artifacts solve the physical mystery of where they went, but they also highlight the brutal reality of their final days. The camp is a monument to 68 people who kept themselves alive for a rescue that simply never came.